So in session one, we talked about the anatomy of a lesson. We talked about the different parts of a lesson. We went through the warm-up, the hook. We talked a little bit about instruction, the importance of practice. But I'm really excited to dive in deep with you to look at formative assessment. If I had to pick a strength that I had personally as a teacher, I would tell you it was formative assessment. So I'm really excited to share with you what I know about formative assessment and the importance of formative assessment. So formative assessment is the assessment that informs your teaching. It doesn't need to be graded. It can be really informal. Sometimes you might find that there's an energy in the room and you're like, these kids don't understand this. I need to spot check it. This for me is less a tool for the students, where a summative tool might be like, hey, this is what you learned and this is what you didn't. This is a tool for me as a teacher. I just taught you something. Did you actually learn it? Right? So it should be done at least once a day in some format. And I would tell you that it should be done multiple times throughout the day. Okay? So formative assessment here. You need to assess it and then react, right? Especially if you're in the AP course and you know there's that test and there's no flexibility on that test, you are going to be really tempted to move past material that your students don't understand for the sake of getting to the material. And I would encourage you to think really carefully about which subjects you can do that with and which subjects you really need to swing back around to. That's going to depend on your students. It's going to depend on how you've used the curriculum, right? But these formative assessments really help us understand how effective our teaching has been. What's the most frequent type of formative assessment? Hold on, Kit. Yeah, thanks. What's the most common type of formative assessment? Is there anything you can think about that we went over in session one that might help you understand what formative assessment is? What about your own background as a student? What is formative assessment? What's the most common type of formative assessment? Okay, I'm not actually going to call on someone here because all I wanted to demonstrate was wait time. Questioning is the most frequent form of formative assessment. Me asking a question, the hands go up, I can get a sense of who wants to answer it and who doesn't. But if you just ask the question and you take the first hand that goes up, you won't get a sense of who really understands the question and who doesn't. How many of you were super uncomfortable? How many of you were like, why isn't she just calling on someone, right? You start to get like itchy on the inside and you're like, all right, I'll answer it if it means it's gonna go away, right? So that wait time is really important. I have to physically count in my head. That's how tempted I am to rush through asking that question. Wait 3 seconds, ask the question again. Ask another 3 seconds, reframe the question or give a hint, right? So wait time, super important. And you could check for understanding. These are the questions that we ask, right? You just do it really informally. You'd be like, okay. And you're waiting for the students to be like, yes, okay. Or that one brave student that's like, nope, I don't get that, right? Another way to do that might be to put fingers. I used to say on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being, Grace, I have no idea what you're talking about and I need you to explain it a different way. And 4 being, I understand this so well I could teach it myself. And I would say, put it up to your chest so that only I can see it. And so students would, gotta be careful of your mic. My students would show on their hands, how they felt about that. So on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being, Grace, I have no idea how to use this in the classroom. I need you to give me more examples. And 4 being like, move through it, Grace. I got this. We don't need to cover it anymore. How comfortable do you feel with formative assessment? Put it on your chest. Okay. So I can take a look around the room and I can get a sense of how you are feeling about what I just taught. Sometimes we just say right after we've explained a question, but instead we could say, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. You saw Helen do that, right? She also had like a middle ground of like, I think I get it, but I've got a few questions. You might say, got it. And again, you're looking for those students to nod. But in order to confirm that students really have it, you want to ask them to explain it in their own words. Okay. So this is a really important one. You need to consider the manner in which you are asking questions. Because you will hear from the same 4 people over and over and over again. I was that kid in class, right? I always wanted to go up. I always wanted to be the volunteer. You need a method or a tool to ensure that not only are you calling on everybody, but that everyone is engaged by your questioning. Okay? So this is sort of that demonstration of wait time, right? With 1 being your itchy insides and wondering why she hasn't called on someone yet. So that, I feel like this diagram does a great job of sort of demonstrating that importance of wait time. Okay, but I guess my question is, can you think of a way, looking at these 3 pictures, if I asked a question, right? This is the teal dots here represent the students who are going to be engaged when I ask a question. Especially if you're a quiet student and you know that if you don't raise your hand, you're not going to be called on. You're done listening, right? But what if I said I'm going to pull your name out of here, right? All of a sudden, the engagement has gone up. So the challenge here, and Helen kind of demonstrated this, is that this can be really intimidating, honestly, for people who don't know the answer, or for people who don't like to speak, right? Or who get choked up, or who think they know the answer, and then the moment you're called on, you're like, I've forgotten my own name, right? Like those kids exist in your class. So what I would do, if I were you, is I would say, I'm going to cold call. So I'm going to give you that question again. Can you list different types of formative assessment? I'm going to cold call someone to give me a type of formative assessment. Take 30 seconds and talk to the person next to you. Make sure that you and the person next to you have an answer to what's a type of formative assessment. Okay, Shaticha? Long is the last name? Yes, thank you. How do you say your name?
Shutian.
Say it again?
Shutian.
Thank you.
So
type of formative assessment.
Let's see. I would present a question and then wait a bit, and
Okay.
then we basically have a bit trick to have a random name randomizer, and then we just randomly click that name randomizer. It
Great.
will pop up the name for the classroom, and then someone will be hit, and then we'll
hit.
and then, but of course, so the problem here is just sometimes the student will ask again, sorry, I didn't really follow your question, and please say it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay. So the engagement went up because you didn't know who I was going to call on. So there's that piece of making sure that everybody is talking about the material and reinforcing the material. Okay. So there's different strategies that we can use to call on people. And Helen has already demoed a lot of them for us. And again, the teal represents the students that are engaged. So calling on hands, that's the number of, you've got those 4 eager kids, right? Everybody else is like, Grace has got it. She's going to answer it. So why do I have to raise my hand? You've got a fist to 5. This one takes a little cultural setting up. Even some of you were like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm too cool for a fist to 5. You're definitely going to get that in high school at that wait time. I used to just stand there and wait. And they got it pretty quick that I wasn't going to move forward until I saw every single hand that was up. Around the world, That was the one that Helen demoed at the other side. We started with Lakeisha, right? We started there and we moved forward. So Lakeisha is super engaged. The person next to her is super engaged, right? So you can kind of get a prediction for when. But if you're way over here on the other side of the room, you may or may not be engaged in that process. And then finally, everybody writes that think, pair, share that we frequently do is really important. Okay, so we've got the thumbs up, thumbs down, the fist of 5. You can use stoplight cards. So sometimes you could have students, this works really great when students are working on individual assignments and they get confused. You just whoosh, flip that card over to red, and I know that you need support or help. Or in the middle of a lecture, you're like, oh, something you said there did not make sense. And then there's a number of really interesting ways to gamify this. So you can look at Socrative, Kahoot. You can use Plickers and Go Formative. The cool thing about Plickers is that you use your smartphone. The students have little QR codes that they use, and you scan it. And on your phone, the students turn red and green. So you can sort of see who has got it correct and who hasn't. It's a pretty cool tool if you're in person, for sure.